comments.
Are we live with Facebook?
Yep.
All right. Well, this is Facebook Live Through a Therapist's Eyes. If you happen to catch us for the first time, we do this before the mics come on for real for the weekly recording of the podcast Through a Therapist's Eyes. So you caught us live. We like to do this because we sometimes have, I don't know, recently, Neil, we've had visual aids. He's here. He's going to be in that empty chair over there in a minute. He's doing some of the finishing up touches on the live, but it's a great way to interact with us. You can listen along and type in comments at the end of the show. We've been able to respond to some of those comments. After the show is off, after the live is off the next couple of days, we're able to respond there as well. So it is a fun behind-the-scenes look at us and what we do when the shows turn on, and then we fire up comments and connections with you. We've enjoyed doing the lives. Usually they're Thursdays about 6 o'clock, kind of hit and miss. A little early today, man. I've had a kind of a relaxing day today. That means no shows, though. That's not a good thing. That's actually bad. So here comes the man, the myth, the 2 week in a row behind the cameras legend, Neil.
So did they just reschedule with you, or did they just?
Yeah, they usually reschedule.
Okay,
Or just different things happen. As a matter of fact, it's been funny lately, man. The sunny weather and the nice spring weather that we have going on, dude, man. I think people are just like.
They're taking care of self-care and going out and hanging out, and
They are indeed.
either I can go sit in a fluorescent office for an hour, or I can go
Talking
hike
about
a trail.
feelings and emotions.
Yeah,
Yeah, they're on a trail.
it's like, is it avoidance or is it self-care?
Right. So today on Facebook Live, folks, we are going to be talking about marriage. It's just an interesting topic that I kind of thought of. When do marriage commitments begin? We haven't talked about marriage for a little bit of a minute, so I thought it was about time for that. Boy, we really need to talk about parenting. We haven't talked about parenting in forever.
Yeah, I don't know the last time we talked about
It's been a
parenting.
while.
Well, we did that stuff with Courtney.
Well, that's true.
Needs, but that was also directed more towards children with special needs than it was. So that was kind of a unique.
Not as much parenting per se.
I have a question for you. I've been working with a customer. They're Stepping Stones. Have you ever heard of them?
I think so.
There's the nonprofit organization up in New York that's based around it's the house of one of the co-founders of AA.
Oh, wow.
So I didn't know. I'm gonna broach the topic with them if it's okay. Maybe we can get one of the tour guides or one of the people to maybe get on the show if you wanted.
Oh, that would be badass.
So like I said, I'm working on with my business as a customer, and so that'd be kind of cool because it's like, that'd be kind of a neat little connection with them and talk to them and get that insight.
As a matter of fact, I feel like we should push pause right now. But we are on the record. I've got interacting with a guy that I think is going to be a really cool show. It's an addiction show. He does some stuff. He's actually in Switzerland. I didn't tell you about him yet, did I?
Not yet, no.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting where we have a conversation that will very much impact like the AA program and a perspective that he has on addiction that's different from mine, frankly. Yeah, it'll be
very cool. So so if you're on Facebook, there's a lot of there could be some cool stuff with substance abuse and addiction coming up.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and I thought we would do that on the month that I just told you about before we turned on the mics with the gap there was like July or June, July.
I wonder if we could find a couple extra, maybe we could do a couple of those Zoom during that month.
Exactly. That's what my intention is.
So
talk to them and get somebody.
Yeah, I'll see if I can find someone, see if we get one of their tour guides or something because I think that'd be cool to find out about, him and his wife and all that stuff and talk about the history.
The real Bill Wilson.
Exactly. Bill and Lois Wilson, I think. I think her name was Lois.
Lois was his wife. Yeah, I would love the crap out
of it. I know. That's what I thought about. So I got to get, hopefully I'll do really well for them and they'll be happy. So they'll want to come on.
Well, they'd probably feel good getting some good, PR. I mean, we promote them. So that would be a good part of the promotion.
Yeah,
so please.
Okay. Before I opened the can of worm and asked and got them excited, I want to make sure you got excited.
Absolutely.
So. All right. You
ready to rock and roll?
Yep. All right. Mouse is ready. All right. Ready? All right. 3, 2.
Hello there. You have found Through a Therapist's Eyes, the podcast, where you get to get personal insights directly in your car or home from a therapist. I've been a therapist since 1995 in one form or another, and we have Neil with us for the second week in a row. You get to hang out with us on the mics and on the video cameras. Welcome back, sir.
Thanks. Not a therapist. I just play one on a podcast.
Yeah, you slept in the Holiday Inn yesterday. See the world through the lens of a therapist, but be aware it's not delivery of therapy services in any way. Really appreciate you hanging with us, listening with us, following the show. We actually sold a piece today. I think I noticed on the merchandise bubble, somebody got a journal is what I think it was.
Oh,
that was
awesome.
kind of cool. And I have a little bit more specifics. It's a really fun way to help us out with the show. We haven't gotten the quotes yet. We need to get that kind of going. We've got the logo and stuff out there. You got a cool journal that you can get and use. We got a jigsaw puzzle I've talked about. I think it's really cool. And hats and cell phone cases and stuff. But anyway, it is a way that helps the show. So it is a percentage that we get to support the monthly costs that we incur to do this. So it's like 20%. So if you spend $24, we get like $4 that goes our way. So it's a significant support.
Yeah. So if you guys, is what Chris is talking about, there is a merch button at the top of the website. You can see the stuff we have with the logo and the slogan, and like Chris said, we have a puzzle. But reach out to us on social media through email. Like if there's something that you want, something you like, hey, I like coffee cups. We can make sure we have more coffee cups. Just let us know what you're looking for. Because there's a lot of stuff that we didn't even put our logo on because we didn't want to overwhelm everyone.
And there was a little bit of weirdness. Dude, the logo on the pillow freaked me out. Like, dude, like
we could get you some leggings. Get you some leggings and wear them for the show.
Leggings with the big eye on it. Yeah, there are some creepy factors to the eye logo. So we're gonna get some phrases that go in there. But it really does help us is what I want to make a big point, and we thank you for really being with us and listening to us around the world. We love to doing the show with us. 5-star reviews help out a lot. Subscribe to us on the social media platforms. Apple iTunes lets you make comments. That is really helpful to us. So keep it going, man. This is the human emotional experience, and we endeavor to figure this out together. So we're talking about when do marriage commitments begin today. I think that's I'm curious, as you saw, and Neil kind of found out late in Cord that he was going to be on the mics live today. What was your impression? It's a funny title, I think, isn't it? Right? Like, what did your brain do with that when you saw, like, okay, well, I don't know, when you get married, right? When you say, at the wedding, it's a funny title. What'd you think of it?
I question the validity of people's marriage commitment even after they get married in today's society, but that's a whole nother that's another show,
a different show.
But no, I think it's a very interesting topic because I kind of look back at my life with my wife, and our relationship before we even got married, when we met. Thinking of that timeline, it really is kind of there. You kind of have that weird time when you first meet that person. When does it actually get to that like seriousness?
Right.
When do you really, go from, oh, we're kind of feeling things out to I really like them to wait, I am, it's like those steps. And so it's getting huge.
And they really are steps. I mean, the full basic traditional is, you meet and greet and you like each other, and then you go on a date, and then you date a little bit, and then you make a commitment to dating exclusively and for a while or a little bit of time, and then you make a commitment to get married. You have a fiance relationship, and then you get married. And now you have lots of different forms that people kind of get into, living in together, and second marriages, different relationship structures are all around now. So it's just the intended title was, I thought, a little provocative. I just created it, honestly, to think about, to get really people to think about what are the boundaries here? When do they really kick in? How do we really deal with these things when we're going to set up a life together in marriage?
I mean, there's even some like my wife's aunt, her common law husband, they never actually got married.
Oh, there's lots of that.
But they lived together for a very long time. They just never had the official paperwork, but they had marital commitment without marriage.
Yeah.
So it's kind of an interesting thing.
Which is interesting. I always I hesitate there because I've had common law partners that actually get married after years, and the day after they got married, even though they were together in common law for 15 years, is like boom, everything's different.
That weird pressure, weird yeah.
It's a thing, man.
It is.
Yeah, it's a thing for sure. So this is interesting. They didn't do them back to back. Like, I kind of wish I would have done these back to back, because this show really blends a lot, and I'm going to pepper it into the thoughts that I've prepared about all this with episode 162. So if you haven't, and you can listen to this one all the way through and then go back and listen to that one, because they do work together really well. New dating patterns, move in together or wait, was what we talked about that time on episode 162, and I think that you'll really enjoy that in combination, because I even went back to my thoughts about that and combined them a little bit. So you're ready, maybe you're prepared. I think you saw the show notes when you were preparing for the show earlier in the day, knowing that you were on the hot seat. So EFT, emotion focused therapy. I always like to give a review. I like to challenge people now because it tunes my brain into what you know about it, what you don't. So if you're willing, would you like to do or be willing to do the review?
I'll try. So to me, the emotion focused therapy is the idea that everyone has two different directions they go when they are challenged. You know, what do their emotions say? You know, whether we've talked about abandonment or engulfment, it just goes back to what is that nature that we revert to or that we always fall back onto, which is one of those things. I know you don't like the personality traits test, but you fall back on, you know, that innate nature, you know, when it comes to relationships or how things are happening. What is your emotion you get, and how do you react when your back's against a wall, when you're in those serious relationships or serious questions? And, you know, your abandonment people have that fear of being, you know, someone leaving them or losing them. And then engulfment's the other way, where they're afraid they're going to get swallowed whole. And
swallowed whole.
As an engulfment person, you know, there's a difference, and, you know, like, oh, they're going to leave me. Ooh, quiet time. Ooh.
Yeah, that's cool.
You know, I think that's the fun part, is you and I in our co-hosting or this work together, you and I have different personalities.
It is. We're opposites.
And I think you and Craig were the same, weren't you?
We were. Yeah, we were.
So it's kind of fun now with this dynamic.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, I think and I've struggled with this a lot since I've started working with you on the show about, like, there's got to be more to than just two sides. But then as you've talked, it's like, oh, okay, it makes sense. It pseudo makes sense to me.
Yeah, you did good with that, Neil. I appreciate you taking a good stab at that, because I know that it's challenging, right? And when you do that, you learn more of what you're presenting about, I find, and it's always surprising to me. Like I've said before, like I've had people in therapy working intently on these issues or from this perspective for like months or a year or more. And they still get like, you know, wait a minute, which one am I, Chris? You know, and I'm like, oh, well, you know, yeah, that's on this side, and that's some of the tendencies. And because it's just amazing to me how much this all stuff blends together in people's minds, right? Because you're just experiencing it. You're just in the moment of these things. But go ahead, yeah.
And that goes back, like you said, it's in the moment. Like, this is like when you're not guarded and it's like, this is just, this is your innate, this is how I react, you know? And so I think that's because it is that way. And then when people circle back, like the next day or a couple days later, they don't think about really what was going on. And so that's where that water can muddy.
Yeah.
I need to have like something out there to, people can get that handout, because we created that handout of abandonment and engulfment. And I think that's a really cool cheat sheet that we can start offering to people that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That I think would be like, which one am I? You know, give it to your significant other, like, here, circle. Which ones do you see of me? And I'll do the same for you. And then we'll go to counseling.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the thing that I want to highlight is to back you up is John Gottman created this observation of people. And it really is a piece of when you're triggered and when you're in an emotional state, when something gets really worked up or bubbled up. It's when you get heated or when you get, when your spouse and you are in something. And so not when you're just normal times, you can still see very big tendencies. And as you say, it's ingrained. But what's really loud is when you get into a disagreement or a problem state, you'll get into this state and then you'll really do what you do. And abandonment people pursue, and engulfment people withdraw. Those are the keys. Abandonment people will pursue. They'll run you down. They have to talk about stuff. They have to get things dealt with now. Like, we don't know how to hold back very well. Engulfment people tend to just shut down, put walls up. It's the withdrawal. And they'd rather just have peace. I don't want to deal with anything. I don't want to share my opinion or view because then we have more to talk about. It's like this back and forth and it gets very, very cyclical. So let me tell you what, if you're a newlywed or thinking about getting engaged and listening to this show for that reason, given the title, look, check out episode 11 and 101. I refer people to that all the time. It totally lays out that foundation really well.
And I think going into a relationship with that understanding can really help you as a couple. Because I know there were so many things with my wife and me because we're opposites too in this, and that's one of the first things that you kind of go through the honeymoon period, and then you start getting a little bit like the relationship gets real. and then you start seeing that why does he always keep leaving? I was like, why does she not leave me alone?
Seriously.
And so I think you have to have that understanding. Like, even though I didn't know this, my wife and I talked about that a lot. Where she's like, I was raised to just yell and get it out.
Do it.
I'm like burying my head in the sand and it'll go away, right?
Right.
So,
and that's so common that opposites do kind of attract is the key there. Let's go back to episode 162. Do you remember that one very much when we talked about the don't move in together?
Yeah, you said don't do it at all.
I don't know if I was that stark.
You said you favored that direction. It's probably
my lean.
Not move in too early, kind of thing before marriage.
Do you remember why that was my lean? That would be challenging. I'm
trying to go back and think.
I'll take you off the hook. I'd be impressed if you remembered though.
I'll let you, because I'm trying to think of something about like with the marriage, and then now you're together and there's this commitment and everything kind of works. Where if you move in too early, there's a shift. It's kind of weird in the dynamics from moving into marriage.
You're on it. You're playing around with it, right? Yeah, because what I really believe, the number one reason that people tend to do that is because they want to see what it's like. They want to make sure, let's be thorough and know each other on that level before we make this life commitment. But the problem with that is what people are doing is they're testing out, how do we relate? How do we engage household tasks? How do we manage our life together, living together, laundry, all the nitty gritty, right? Who cooks, who cleans, whatever. And so you feel like you're getting an accurate test. But the reality of it is it's not accurate at all. As I said, people have been common law marriage for double-digit years plus. And when they have gotten married, it's as though everything just changed. It's all different. So you're not getting an accurate reading is the thing.
Right.
And when you're engaged and not living together, you can get all the information that you need. I fear that it creates false beliefs.
Yeah, and I think also if you move in before you're really committed, you don't have that pressure of that commitment. So like you said, it's a completely different dynamic. Oh, hey, we're moving in together. Okay, if it doesn't work out, who cares? You're less stressed.
Absolutely.
But then you go through and you're married. Now it's like either...
Listen, you got to deal with this stupid stuff.
Yeah, if you're really committed to it, you have to deal with it. So it adds an added layer to it. And I think...
it's a commitment.
I'm a big proponent of waiting until you're married.
Because really, I mean, if you're going to stay together or get divorced based on laundry, come on.
There'd be a lot more divorces.
Right? Based on food and bathroom rituals and routines. Like, come on, those aren't the things that you need to know to make a decision. I'm going to spend a lifetime with you. So you're getting false information about what it is about you and the person and the levels of boundaries and emotional commitments. And we're going to talk about tonight the idea of what are some of the things you need to talk about. And I really enjoyed thinking about that list. I spent a little time on it, really thinking about it, because that's the important information you really need to think about, to hear, to know, to learn, to share. And whether you do laundry once a week or once a day or whatever, it's not important, man.
I think someone said when it came to religion was like, you have to align on the dogma, but the doctrine and the other pieces you can kind of disagree on. And these are those questions.
Okay,
is
dogma. That's a big word for me. What's dogma, real quick?
That's kind of like the overarching emphasis of everything. As a Christianity, it's, Jesus and the resurrection, with, I'm not going to go to the other religions because I'll butcher them.
Yeah.
But the idea is you have that one ever present, like across, no matter what the denomination is, there's that one thing. And so these questions you're going to probably talk about are going to be
democracies around the world would be voting, and that's the dogma. Yeah.
Right. So the dogma is that big thing. The doctrine and the practices, those are kind of like, well, you could smoke, I'll dance, we're fine. Kind of like the whole Baptist Protestant. So I think that's what's important. Being aligned on the dogma,
not doctrine.
Not the doctrine, because the dogma is what matters. Well, I want 2 kids. How you raise them, it's going to be different, because
we can have that on a pillow for the merch, Neil, but I think the back of the pillow might need an explanation.
Yeah.
Like a full written out paragraph. Sorry, it just popped in my head. I want to shoot through these things a little quick in the beginning so we can get to the stuff that I wanted to spend, though. Yeah. You know what I got to do today? What? Not today. When was it? 2 days ago.
Tuesday.
Premarital counseling.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Do you think it's going to work? No.
Doom. No, I'm just kidding, y'all. That was a total joke. No, I did. I got to do an initial assessment, and it was pure and simple premarital counseling. I'm telling you, it was so cool. And I told them that was the case. And I don't get to do that a lot. You've heard me talk about that on the show before.
Usually it's more like pastors and priests are the ones that kind of usually do the premarital stuff. That's what we did. It was like, I think one of Alicia's pastors before we got married.
15 minutes was ours, I think. Literally, maybe a half hour. We sat down for one time for like a half hour, 45 minutes tops. And you'll do like a 2-3 session stuff. Some places, you're right, it is pastors and counselors, or not counselors, pastors that get programs developed from counselors is what I'm trying to say. And which is a bit more thorough, but you just get so limited scope when you're doing things that way. And a lot of times it's really based on gender norms, which isn't at all, by the way, EFT review has nothing to do with the way that people organize their behavior.
Yeah. You'd
think that all men are supposed to be engulfment in their man cave. Leave me alone. Give me my space. I don't want to talk.
Coming from Mr. Abandonment.
Right? We have to talk about things. A lot.
And that is one of the cool things about EFT is it really doesn't matter which one's which. And that's why it's always important when you go into relationships.
Yeah.
It could be either way.
And grossly misunderstood when you don't really get it. So my plug here is do premarital counseling. And I took from your words last week, I think it was, Neil, when you were talking. No, it was when Melissa was here, and we were struggling with the word, I think, and you popped in on the mic and you're like, I think of it as an investment. Like it's not counseling work, right? Can you see the value of being married for, I think, a while now, right? You double-digit years, I think. 18. Can you imagine what an investment, how valuable an investment is in premarital counseling, just having been married that long?
Oh, it was huge because we did it. Like
you did?
We did some premarital counseling with, like I said.
Oh, wow. Good for you.
With, like I said, Alicia's pastor, we did some stuff with them. And I think it was maybe 2 or 3 sessions.
Oh, well, yeah.
We didn't do therapy, but I mean, it's one of those things. Alicia and me are kind of interesting, unique people, but we invested the time, even though it wasn't as much as, say, a 6-week session or this other stuff. There was still that you understand that because we were committed for the long haul, it's worth the time to make sure that we're grounded. We have that good foundation when we get together. And so that's, because we are committed to long time, 40, 50 years, however long it is before.
I mean, it's a long time. How much time do you spend researching your car or talking to the different people that you have to talk to about that, for crying out loud? That's a new metaphor that I just created in the moment. I mean, buying a house. You ever buy a house? Like, my gosh, how much prep work do you do to protect your investment of a stupid house?
How much investment do people do looking at Yelp reviews just for dinner?
Seriously, that is perfect. Yeah, you'll read down through, I bought a speaker and oh my God, I started reading the reviews and one person wasn't happy and I read and read and read and read. Like, I spent time on this investment. Premarital counseling is a hugely important, wildly potential investment in your time and space together as a spouse. I'd really, really like to highlight that.
Yeah.
I just can't say that enough or strongly enough.
And I think, this may sound kind of counterproductive, but I think premarital counseling could also keep you from committing to someone you shouldn't be committed to. There's a benefit on both sides of it, because you might think, oh, this is the best person since sliced bread. And if you go through counseling and someone like you, Chris, that can say, look, there's some red flags or some issues.
Oh my gosh.
And you know how to direct the conversation. You talked about it. Your experience allows you to direct the conversation just so you don't have to say that person's not good. You can guide it to where you ask them the question that kind of maybe triggers the other person think, wait.
Wow. Neil, what? I'm so glad that is so organic, and I'm so glad you just said that. You're totally on point. What you just did is put my mind in a little bit of a journey, imagining something that's never happened to me. Doing premarital counseling with a couple that really seems to be in like a guise or a direction or to have some warning signs of domestic violence.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, wow. Is what just went through in my mind. Like, how would I deal with that? What would I do is what I was just doing a little journey with while you were talking about that. And that's so true. Like, I wouldn't say, oh my God, you guys are out of control. This is, don't do this. But I'm definitely going to be asking questions that pointedly gets at, when you feel this and you do that, what happens for you? And I'm going to be looking at a person and I'm getting weird vibes from, that has some narcissism in him, has some strong codependency, and I'm going to say, well, when he's kind of was mean during that fight, and you just sort of went in your shell and didn't tell him what you were thinking, what happened with that decision, and what did that result? I mean, I'm gonna be on that stuff kind of now. Don't get me wrong. I can only see what somebody's presenting, and it can be totally missed as well. So I don't want to set up an unrealistic thing.
Well, and it goes back to the importance of having more than just a 15-minute pre-counsel. If you're really going to go that route, and
good point.
Of course, the reality is, if they're in that type of relationship, usually the abuser would probably not want to go to premarital counseling.
Yeah, it would be very hard.
So that would be one of those things.
Maybe why it's never happened.
Maybe it's just as simple as, you guys really don't jive, Like, wait, he wants 20 kids and you don't want any? Like, what's going on? Did you even ask these questions?
Seriously. Good segue. What are the questions? Let's talk a little bit about the things that you might really want to talk about before you get all hitched up, and I did that because it gets at the questions of when do these commitments begin? Well, it isn't a commitment when you're just talking, but if you think very early on in that process, when you're dating, you're beginning to get to know somebody, and you begin to talk about these things, and they're important kind of delineations on what it is that's okay and what's not okay. Like, you have a certain amount of deal breakers, and that's why we talk about these things. So it's not quite a marital commitment when you talk about, first on my list was, do you want kids or not? And that's an easy one to pick. I'm sure people would, be able to do this. Like Facebook Live right now, if you're totally live with us, type the many things as you can think of, and we'll see. That would be fun to see what is on our list for what you're seeing right now. So type into the line there. Maybe try to come up with 5 things that you would think important to talk about, and we'll see if they made them on our list. And if they didn't, I will give you, you know what? Maybe we should send them something from the merch button. We'll send you something.
I'd love to start doing stuff with the merch and getting people.
Yeah, we'll send you something if you get something that's on the list. It's time stamped now. We'll know where it is. Now I lost my train of thought. What was I saying?
Conversations are less committed than.
Yeah. So if you don't talk about kids, and one wants and the other one doesn't, that's a big factor. So that's why I say people are probably going to get that easily. But no, what I was on is the idea that, when you have that conversation, it's not a hard and fast commitment that's a part of marriage, is it? But if we're dating 3 months in and you tell me I absolutely don't want kids, and I'm sitting here thinking, a family's always been important to me. And we talk about that and you say, well, yeah, okay. We work through that issue, and you say, okay, well, I could probably have a kid for you because if we're really getting married, I would maybe do that. Well, that's pretty important. So when we get married a year from now, and you tell me I told you I didn't want to have kids, I'm gonna have a problem with that, right? So these are marital commitments, sometimes way early on in the meet and greet and get to know you. Does that point hold? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think the key that you mentioned too is that, because I don't want someone to listen to these like, we just don't agree, it's not going to work out. When it comes to reality of commitment in relationships, just because you don't agree initially doesn't mean that there's not a compromise going to happen.
Yeah,
but I think you have to understand that there has to be if you don't agree, there has to be a compromise on one or two, and if you're the only one compromised, we've talked about some of the bad behaviors, then you got to look at that as a red flag too. But, I think that's something that, my wife and I were big on, making sure that we both were pretty much set to have kids.
We were actually clear as 1, 2, and done.
So we were like, that's what we were like, no matter what happens, 2, we're done.
No more.
You could go for the perfect, boy-girl combination.
That would have been great.
But, we got 2 boys, which I'm honestly so happy to have boys. But
Same.
My wife is too. She's like, I don't know what I'd do if I had a girl, because she's not really girly, but it's I'm so glad. But then we still have the teenage attitude. Yeah.
Oh, there's a lot. Yeah, there's a lot. We could degenerate into parenting strategies. Although that's number 2 on my list. Before I go any further, Neil, I mean, catching you, with just a fresh mind. I don't know if you went down through all of those things that I spent some time on. What do you think is important when you think about what are marriage commitments and things to discuss and talk about? You could probably pick a couple of the simple ones, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to think because I tried not to. Once I saw my part where I was in it, I didn't try to read it because I know you like the surprises and stuff like that. But I know kids was a big thing for us. Honestly, talking about our family history, because both of our dads had been married, but they were on their 3rd marriages. So that goes back to the, for us, there was more principles on the commitment. If once we get married, we're committed, we didn't want to be like our fathers. And so we looked at that, we did talk about religion, what is our faith and believing, she was raised Southern Baptist. I was raised in Home Fellowship. But we were still both Christian. Yeah. So we understood that as the primary basis.
I remember talking to a lady dating her in college. She was in the Pentecostal faith tradition, right? And I struggled with that. I remember talking to my grandma about it, actually, or was it my grandma? It must have been. Yeah, she died when I was fairly young in school. So I think it was early on. Anyway, I'm like, wow, can I date someone that's that different than my basic Catholic at the time faith tradition? And it was an interesting. We talked about. That's
quite a stretch. Catholic
different.
And Pentecostal. That's a huge that's a pretty big stretch.
It's different
on the Christianity scale. That's it's almost like opposite.
Yeah. So. Yeah. And that was my major upbringing and stuff. So I remember talking about with that girlfriend, and yeah, I'll just leave it at that. We had some good conversations about it.
I mean, those are kind of our big dogmas when it came down to it. And then, of course, we talked about the principles that we wanted to put for our kids. What were some of the foundations and how we wanted to raise them. The rest of the stuff that we had, because I'm looking at your list, and I'm like, we worked through a lot of those things, but it wasn't okay, that's, you talk about, your dreams, passion, support, planner, versus not, like a lot of that stuff we just that was kind of the fun part to explore
Yeah.
as we got to know. So it was
some of this happens very naturally.
Yeah. And so that was good. So we didn't really talk about it, but it's like, oh, and then of course years down the road, like, God, that's driving me nuts. Oh wait, no, that's because that's how they are. And it's like,
because you had learned them.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's my son calling, actually. That doesn't happen very often. And he has things going on. I think I want to push pause. Hey, you hit me in the middle of a recording, but I picked up.
So now we're unmuted. I muted the mic and then I paused the recording. So I learned to pause the recording instead of stop it. So now I don't have to try to merge two videos together. So,
Okay, so paused, and we can just pick it back up.
Yep.
Okay,
So,
then you won't have to do any editing.
yeah, that's a pain. The export's the longest part.
Okay, cool.
So, all
Yeah,
right.
cool.
You ready for me to start?
Yeah,
back up?
go.
All right, 3, 2.
All right, well, that wasn't too much of a break for us. It's instantaneous for you. That's the first time that's ever happened where my son or somebody called in the middle of a recording, and I usually deaden out my phone so it wouldn't have rang, but that was fun.
That's one of those things, like, when you get that unexpected. Like, if my mom called me right now, I'd be like, that's weird. Why is she calling me? And you'd pick up.
Well, I always do for my family because they know what I'm doing generally. Mm-hmm. As a matter of fact, he's funny. He always calls me now and he asks me, he's like, "Are you in a session?" Because I leave my stuff on for them to be available to attach to if need be. But text first, buddy, if it's not important. So, what we were on is looking at these things. Dave Ramsey, I thought was cool in the things that he highlighted. And he'd done a lot of research, on the factors, and he looks at kids, money, religion, and in-laws as the primary things that tend to cause marital problems and divorce. Mm-hmm. So that was, I think, pretty interesting, and I think I would agree with them. Those are hot-button issues, what I call flashpoints, but what I really kind of feel like is that doesn't really get at what sustains relationships. If you resolve those 4 things, so you talk about kids and you resolve those differences, and you talk about money and you really get geared into like how we're really going to join forces in life, and you talk about religion and get in somewhere in square with what your acceptability is. Maybe you are Jewish and I'm Christian, or you're Muslim and I'm Jewish. People can be in a healthy relationship that way. That is absolutely possible. Back to your point, you talk about these things and you work through them. One family might really want their children raised in a tradition, the other one's not so worried about it, so that can work. But even if you deal with these 4 things, I feel like there's other things that get at what are the important ways that we're going to live life together. That's why I thought a lot about these and added some of those other ones that you kind of said, yeah, well, they were fun to talk about. I mean, it was good. It was entertaining, getting to know you. But I think those getting to know you is, let's be purposeful about them and be on point, or on do them on purpose. So listen to a few of these that you mentioned. So I had the first things in my mind: kids, parenting, tendencies, though. That's different than talking about just kids. What are your tendencies with parenting? You're going to get at your family culture, what you experienced, how you imagine raising kids. Of course, having kids as I do, a best plan doesn't work until you're punched in the face.
Yes.
Everybody, who was George Foreman said that, or somebody?
Yeah, or it might have been a military. Yeah, I think it was a boxer, but they also have something about that too, with the best laid plans only work.
I think Tyson said it.
Probably.
There's
a military thing like that too.
True. Yeah.
But yeah, that's a great.
Get punched in the
That's
face.
what life's like, you know.
It really is.
And that's what we learn when your wife's pregnant. You go through all those pregnancy classes, and like, you
Yeah.
know, you make your plans, and then you do the best you can.
Yeah. And again, these are kind of commitments that you're laying out. Just like the kid thing, you're laying out the commitment of what are the strategies that I think of parenting. How do I imagine this together? You're at least starting out together in a way that's not dramatically a problem for you. And that's important, because if this stuff really sends up red flags, then you're really evaluating our ability to maneuver through really important life things just on an emotional level. So religious factors, I said, financial goals, debt, and other financial realities. But I added like budgeting, and I'm sure Dave Ramsey meant all those things. But it's really important to begin talking about how you manage your money. Funny story that I got to tell. When I got together, I must have been engaged, or I think I was just about. No, I wasn't engaged yet. That's the whole point of it. So I remember going to my girlfriend at the time in college house, and I sat down, and was in her living room, just watching TV, and I just kind of cocked my head over, and she's like, when I got that question, I knew something was going on. so we both laugh about it now, but I remember I was like, so how much credit card debt do you have? Just random one night. Yeah, I think she answered.
I mean, it's a big
question,
because that becomes a big strain on both of you, you know, whether credit card or finance.
Yeah.
Like, some people will be like, all right, we're together. Because that's the other question, you know, nowadays is, do you do a joint bank account?
Yeah, there's
You know, do you
different
do
answers
joint,
for that.
separate? Do you have separate savings? And so that's one of those financial questions. That to me is kind of a bigger thing. You know, how committed are you? Are we in a joint account? Do you have your own savings account? You know, do you have your own checking account? You know, I think for both Alicia and me, that the idea of us having separate accounts was kind of like, how committed are we really to this if we're not fully committing our financials? You know, and that was for Alicia and me.
Yeah.
And of course, I know there's some people that like that independence still, even though they're together, that having that little bit of separateness is that safety blanket or comfort for them.
And those are the things that you want to kind of work through when you're getting, you know, into how is this going to work together. Again, these are sometimes very early on. How do you handle money? What do you do with debt and, you know, comments and conversations and very purposeful things. They really get at kind of laying out those commitments that early on. So when does a commitment begin in marriage? I mean, we're beginning to answer the question early.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways. Financial goals, dreams and passions, and your support and excitement and encouragement for one another. Like, what do you really dream? What are you really passionate about? I think that's part of the getting to know somebody. But there are sometimes when people are afraid to share those things, and you want to be purposeful about discussing them. I would say. Are you a planner, or do you take things as they come in life? So your pattern with, I mean, you know, if you're planning dates and planning events and vacations together, you begin to get a sense of that. But how will you tolerate the fact that I live by the seat of my pants and I have no plans? Is that going to be something that's chronically nagging at you, or can you understand that about me? And can you make a commitment to accept that piece of me? Question, right? I'm not asking you, Neil.
I'm taken.
You're taken. Share the effects of family that it's had on your life. So you're not just talking about your family, but sharing the effects of your primary life relationships in a way that you're, you know, something young people aren't told that need to be told, that if you're listening to this show, you're going to be told. In a lot of ways, you're marrying your spouse's family. Did you ever hear that before?
I know I married my wife's family.
Right.
She was a lot closer to hers than I was with mine. And
Yeah.
so, you know, that
Were you ever told that before you were married?
I don't think so.
No.
I didn't really care enough, but
No one ever told us.
yeah.
Here's one. Sexual history. It's funny that people are afraid to really engage in those discussions, and it forces you to look at the fear that you have. You know, commitment and talking about these topics. Your sexual history is a really important part of your life. almost for a safety reason, let alone how do we blend the realities there. And people are sometimes very, very ambivalent about sharing that. Will you accept me if you know this and this and this and that and that and those things about me?
But isn't that also one of the like the big like deciding
Did you get
factors
that? That
in
was like a
divorce?
play on
Yeah.
like many sex partners. Okay.
I got you on that one. But no, I mean isn't that one of the things, like the lack of intimacy, the lack of sex is a big driving factor in a lot of divorces too. So not having that as the basis and not having that as one of the top, we'll add that to the fifth thing of Dave Ramsey's. That's kind of that thing that becomes,
Could be said.
So that's kind of an important thing to know,
Absolutely. But
So-
people are abashed or afraid to discuss.
Yeah.
Residential plans, really, it kind of goes to your hopes and dreams. How you prefer or engage in personal time. That's a really big one to ask, honestly, when you're just dating, because early on, you're kind of beginning to formulate these commitments, remember, right? And you're dating, and so everything's great, and we love spending enough time together, and can't get enough of each other, all that, fun stuff, sex is great, all that. But then when you really kind of get it pointedly, well, wait a minute, so when you want to do just yourself, how does that work for you? People may not even think abandonment people. What do you mean time with myself? I don't want any time with myself. We're always together, right? But if you're asking that, it's kind of setting up like the norms of like, no, you know what? We're getting married. We are two individuals becoming a one unit of a couple, but there's still two individuals in that unit. And it lays out like a very important part of your personal time is yours. Mine is mine. How do we manage that?
And that's one of those things you have to discuss if you're not living together.
Right.
Going back to that, because because if you only hang out, hey, we're going to go spend the weekend together, we're going to go do lunch or a day trip, whatever. When they leave, there's more time that they spend with themselves. You don't get to see that. So therefore, you have to talk about it because you don't really see what their personal time is. And it could be a big issue, An abandonment person says, hang out with me and be right next to me 24/7. And Golfman's like, give me like an hour by myself. I just need to.
A day.
Yeah.
Well, you're a mild golfer if you're looking for only an hour, bro.
I need more than that, but I'm trying to
Try to water it down.
I've been married long enough to an abandonment person to kind of be like, I can recharge relatively fast now.
Good. You've lost this engulfment. Garbage.
Whatever.
Oh man, Craig and I used to always have fun just making fun of some of that stuff because it is silly in some ways, but it's also very, very real and super painful when you don't really have these things understood. And we're going to come to talk about expectations here, shortly to an extent. And then lastly, I really said norms for household tasks and stuff, but I want to move on. I think you get the point. Like, how will we handle life? What does this really look like? And it needs to be kind of laid out. Now, some people would say, why do you have to talk about this, Chris? Why do you have to make these agreements? Because if you don't, I'll jump to it now. It's out of order, but it fits. If you don't, you run into all kinds of problems with expectations, right? I see this a lot. Massive resentments get developed, particularly after you're married, and these expectations haven't really been discussed or agreed or understood, and under the surface, it just boils, it just cooks, it can be maddening, and then that triggers the engulfment or the abandonment experiences, and boom, 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 stuff starts clicking, and it doesn't feel real good, and it takes you by surprise, particularly if it's been percolating for any level of time. So expectations, we could do a whole show on it.
I think we did a whole show.
We did, actually. Yeah. If you were not behind the mics, I'd ask you to pop that episode and see if you're able to figure that out. I'll talk for a little bit because that's a really important one when we did a show on expectations.
Yeah. And I think one thing that, one other thing I added to your list, Chris, especially with today's society, is politics. I feel like in today's society, politics.
Oh my God, really?
Well, I mean, even look at the abortion stuff, pro-choice versus pro-life.
As an important marriage component discussion, that's surprising to me. Go further, because I would not think that.
Well, I mean, like I said, the idea of a lot of politics with some of the policies and stuff that are in place, if you two are completely opposite spectrums, I mean, just think about what kind of turmoil that could. You talk about resentment. You know, this person thinks this, I think that. How dare they think that? You know,
okay.
And I feel like part of it is because of today's society. There's a whole lot of stuff when it comes to politics and that I think that needs to be at least addressed. You know, watch.
Oh, wow.
You know, sit down, watch CNN and Fox News, and see how your other person reacts to each station.
Jeez.
Episode 102, Managing Expectations in Marriage.
Perfect. Episode 102. Thank you for that. Yeah, I'm just sitting here puzzled. I have this puzzled look on my Facebook Live face, I'm sure, because... or the YouTube. I think you're probably right to a certain extent. It's honestly, that's almost a bit of a sad testimony to me, though. Like, I would not have thought that, and I didn't see that anywhere. I've honestly never heard of that mentioned in therapy psychology world. But I think you make a really good point, because on some level that can create anger points that you have to kind of deal with. Now, that's also going to change all throughout life, which these things do change. You know, these commitments, you do reevaluate them with different life events after you're married. But goodness, that's weird. I'll have to think more about that.
And going back to those, the one thing I do want to say about this is you don't have to go through this whole list. I would say that having this list and knowing what's important to you is what matters. If you don't care about household tasks, you don't have to make a big deal about it. But if you care about, you know, residential plans, because my family always lived in this area and I need to be in an apartment versus a townhome or a house, those are big deals. And so to me,
or I could never move away from my family.
The things that matter to you is what you need to talk about. You don't have to hit all these things. That's
a good point.
Those are what matter.
It's a really good point. And you'll feel the energy about them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Ones that aren't that big of a deal, you'll probably already know or you hadn't thought about because, you know. But is it possible to have some of these that you have a lot of energy about and didn't think about? I think yes.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. Right? So that's where you want to think about these lists at least then and see, like, what are some things that maybe I do have as high energy, important parts to me that I have no idea what my boyfriend thinks about. You know, that's... We are Facebook Live again. Technical difficulties this particular episode. We cut in the middle because, can I just tell him on Facebook Live? It's behind the scenes. Neil plugged his wall jack in and didn't plug the computer in, and the computer died. Our equipment just went kapooped. So we are correcting various power needs and structure of the show.
No, I'm not sure where we were when it stopped. When it shut down on me. So, well, I think I got my last statement in, and then I think we're transitioning to the next part. So,
well, that's fine. I'm gonna finish up the expectations.
There we go. All right. Oh.
So what are we doing? Count me down or whatever.
Yeah, we'll do the whole countdown again, and I think how long did you have on the timer yet for it?
48.
And that's about right.
Yeah,
so we'll
I only had it running for a minute or so.
Yeah. So, all right, ready? All right, 3, 2.
All right, this is another technical difficulty interaction, interruption. Shall we say what happened?
Yeah, go ahead.
I got to do it on live.
Of course.
He plugs in the jack to the wall and doesn't plug in all the equipment that needs the actual power, so it just bloop, ran out of power.
We don't have wireless power yet.
Wireless power. Awesome. We need wireless power. So we have a delay. I'm not sure how much we'll chop it up because we generally are genuine on the show. We don't do a lot of editing. You may need to do an editing on this one. I don't know.
I might cut off the end depending how I'll have to go look at the audio and see where we were. Try to keep it as clean as possible. But yeah, things happen, people, you know.
It's all right.
That's the way it is.
Somebody once told me, he's like, I heard a dog in the background one time. I'm like, a dog? Really? It was Craig's dog.
I was gonna say probably.
Yeah, it was Craig's dog. We literally heard his dog. It was awesome.
Yeah.
So what I was finishing up, and we'll finish the section up on, it is a really important component of setting up expectations. I mentioned, hopefully made a strong point to really help you see and understand, like, we really have to have these expectations in place, which is why we talk about some of these things. There are two ways to really get at healthy and solid expectations, because expectations get a bad rap. People think of them as like, that's wrong, that's bad. You shouldn't expect anything from me. You should just love me and accept me unconditionally. Well, if we make an agreement on something, then I'm going to expect that you and I follow through on said agreement, right? Otherwise, why do we have agreements?
Yep.
So it does create a certain amount of reasonable expectations. They can change, they can be renegotiated, but agreements are good ways to come at expectations. And the other are long-term norms. And I always use this simple example of, if we have for 72 weeks in a row Sunday dinner together at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and it's Sunday's tomorrow for the 73rd week, I can reasonably assume at 2 o'clock we're going to have a dinner together, right? So long-term norms are also reasonable. A lot of the rest of them just aren't. And that's where a lot of pain can be had when you haven't made these commitments to marriage prior to being married, right? Okay. So the little segment here that I wanted to do on what is really meant by a phrase that highlights this show. I guess I forgot to highlight it in the beginning. Act like you're married before you're married, right? There's several aspects to that, but obviously it refers to the point before you become a fiance. Because it's not obvious, because after you're a fiance, you're really in the hot and heavy, you are going to be my spouse. That's the commitment, an extra level commitment that we made. So hopefully by then you're certainly already acting like you're married, meaning this is genuine. This is being vulnerable. This is, practicing honesty and really laying in some of the real true foundations that you want in a healthy, happy, functioning, established relationship. But there's also an important part about deal breakers that need to be honored. You act like you're being married before you're married is a phrase that came to my mind as a bit of a genesis for the show, because you're going to be genuine about your deal breakers. Like, if you're having a conversation about religion and you really do not want to be engrossed in a relationship with somebody that doesn't believe Jesus Christ was like Lord, they're Jewish, that's a big deal for me. So that's got to be treated respectfully to yourself and can be a deal breaker. So if you're acting like you're married before you're married, you won't run into a deal breaker after you're married. That's just not a good sequential reality. But a big thing is being able to be real and vulnerable and genuine. That's acting like you're married. The more that you practice that, you lose the veneer, you lose the mirage that sometimes happen, especially in early dating. You want to be real with this person. And in that, you're really in the challenging aspect of being seen. Really being seen by this person that you're going to spend the rest of your life with. Neil, I don't know if I can convey how intimidating that really is, So when we're talking about this idea of acting like you're married before you're married, do you get a grasp on the super important, you take it even from an emotion-focused standpoint, right? Abandonment, engulfment. Can you really be vulnerable with the insecurities that you have, the fears that you have, the freakouts that you're going to be struggling with for the rest of your life? Like, I do remember talking about being afraid that she would leave me. I was very, very direct about that. And I'm glad that I was, because I put it out there. And it's something that, as an abandonment side of the equation, struggle with today. right? But for sure. So let me go on a little bit further. You'll learn how to disagree. You'll learn how to deal with conflicts. I do get nervous when young couples say, well, we just don't fight. We never really have any disagreements. It's
You haven't talked. You haven't really had deep conversations. You haven't really done anything yet.
What have you dealt with then? Exactly. Not much sustenance, and that gives me concern as a therapist. Because conflict is going to happen. In fact, it needs to happen. It's a natural thing to happen. It's a real and vulnerable and genuine reality that's a part of a close relationship. And so you get the idea, like there's a lot to this act like you're married before you're married stuff.
Yeah, and I think that's something that's interesting. When you talked about the principles you have, but then the reality of it is, how do you really interact? How do you really go back and forth? How do you, like you have in the notes, how do you be vulnerable? How do you ask them for help? How do you, do you go to them when you're having a bad day? And this is, like I said before, this is just how do you interact when you're at your lowest point? How do you act when you're at your highest point?
Highlight that. How do you act when you're at your lowest point is a big highlight. Go ahead.
Well, I also think how do they react when you're at your lowest point?
Yeah.
Because that's a huge thing. You think about it, because a relationship, there's ups and downs. You had a bad day. You had a bad day at work. You got fired. You wrecked your car. You blah, 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 whatever happened. Are they there to comfort you and help you push past it? Are they babying you and not really allowing you to move past it? Are they mocking you? Yeah. Are they critical? So, and I think this is real cool. I've never thought about that before. And like, really, if you act like you're married, if you really have those conversations, if you really experience those life things together and you really experience the ups and downs, when you get married, that's when being married shouldn't change as much as.
That's the goal, right? That's the goal. I mean, you've been married for 18 years, like you say, so you see these things. I wonder, I don't know, you and I are probably too long married to get back to that and know what the experience is. Question for the audience in the feedback comments on the show platforms. When you're younger and newly wedding, ing, is this, can you get your mind there? Like, I'd be curious to talk to a person who's been dating someone for 2 years and considering getting married right now to see like what framework of mind can you possibly be at, because some of it you just can't be prepared for.
No, you can't.
It's impossible. You cannot be married. Let me say this very clearly too. Ooh, this is good. Might even be a quote. You decide. You cannot be married until you're married. Is that quotable? Because I think that is true. Or you can't act like you're married until you're married. That's another reality. What to think about that, but I think those are true statements. Nevertheless.
Yeah, and I think when you get married, when you are with that person 24/7, it changes the dynamic because you get to see those 2 a.m. moments that you didn't know really happened, or you get to see when they do have a bad day and they have that nervous breakdown. Normally, it's like. You go on a date later and they have that time to deal with it. You see it and you deal with that rawness, good or bad, and so I definitely think that's, like I said, you can do your best. You can build your conversations. You can start spending as much time as you can together. But until you actually get married and spend time together, you really don't get the fullness of what that person's really like.
Yeah, which leads you to believe, well, shouldn't we move in together then to get to that point?
Nope.
No. And I think that's some of the thinking. But again, remember, you're still not really getting accurate information. Because people sleep over. We have sleepovers when we're dating, don't we? Good Lord. Sometimes we were at each other's house more than we were alone out of our house, but you're really not getting the accurate, still even then, same information. Let me give you the idea that is the ultimate goal here. The ultimate goal for being married and acting like you're married before you're married and answering the question, when do commitments begin? Here is the golden goal, right? Being able to get to the point where you can say truly, genuinely anything that comes to your mind and still feel safe to the other person, right? Like that is the golden egg in the space between two people that we're trying to strive for. It's an ideal. It's the dogma, if you will. I've learned a new word or how to use it today from Neil. It's a centerpiece that we're all trying to strive towards that I think we probably just can't get to. Now, I don't want that to depress you. I want you to be realistic because that's a standard, man. That's a big standard. Saying anything that's on your mind to your spouse or fiance or boyfriend, girlfriend, anything that comes to your mind and still feel safe in the space between you and them. That's tough.
That is tough. And I think what I've learned in my time is sometimes I feel like I can say anything to my wife. I just need to know when to say it.
Timing is important.
Timing, and that's what you get with your relationships and your conversations.
I suck at that timing thing.
You learn. Well, as an abandonment person, yeah.
I would.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Engulfment, we kind of think about it and process it like, oh, now, wait, hang on. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm good. Abandonment is like,
we got to do it now.
I just want to say it. Let me get it out.
Got to get it out. It's true. We suck at timing. We suck at timing. Listen, if you've listened to the show, it is a fun time. I think I want to taxi us in for landing. Get out of here, Neil. Do you have closing thoughts or questions or anything on your mind?
Just, really be. I think the way you wrapped up with that ultimate goal, I think you need to keep that in mind when you're dating someone. That is really what you want to do. And if you don't feel comfortable, if you're not at a point that you can get to that where you can feel comfortable saying, like I said, maybe you don't say it when you want to say it, but if you don't feel comfortable saying the things that come to your mind that matter to you, you need to question your commitment or question what you need to do to get to that point.
That's a good point.
Because that's because sometimes it's like we're not there yet, but let's have these conversations and don't avoid the conversations.
Because, by the way, we're growing together as we're discussing these things. I mean, you have holes as a young person in your experience, and you're growing. I mean, if you have all these things figured out, man, you're pretty well adjusted. And I don't know many people that are that well adjusted.
And until you get that other person there, it doesn't matter how adjusted you are. They're going to throw you off kilter.
Yeah.
So...
Absolutely. So listen, dating is a wonderful time. It's a fun time. It's a time where you really get to explore yourself in context as well with another person and explore being accepted and how you tolerate being accepted and practicing accepting as unconditionally as possible this other person. I mean, there's a lot going on. It's a beautiful time. It's a fun time. And it's also an important time that sets up a relationship, such as with marriage, that is intended to be forever, a permanent decision. And I really want to highlight spending the invested time with a premarital counseling experience, or at least with these questions and these thoughts, that you really genuinely and openly strive towards what we are striving for that are married. To be able to talk about these things and discuss them in a safe way, saying anything that comes onto your mind. It's a tough standard. It's one that we can all strive to get closer than we are to today. And that's the goal, not perfection. Every relationship has growing spots. Two imperfect people getting together to create an imperfect union. It's a wonderful way to think about being or becoming married. Hope this has been helpful. Thanks for hanging with us. Take care, and we will see you next week.
All right. Oh, we got a comment.
We do have a comment.
I'll go see what it is.
I can take my mic off here and journey around and stand up. Oh, I guess I am on a camera.
For these comments from Cass?
Sure.
Okay, her first response. You have a lot.
Maybe we'll go with the one.
Okay. When two strangers find each other, fall in love, want to spend their lives together, they better like each other first before they go any further. Marriage is not just la la land and walks in the meadow and sex and fun times. Life happens, things happen, and things can be very serious affecting the couple.
Okay.
And then she does agree with me on politics.
Ah, you agree with Neil on politics.
Political beliefs can really affect marriage. Even getting vaccinations have caused tensions in marriage. Wearing masks has caused tension. Voting for a particular candidate or party has caused tension. These are modern times. Religion was old school.
Yeah, I like I said, I think I agree with both of you. I hadn't really thought of that as a premarital discussion, but it's actually kind of cool to think about. Like, some things definitely change in the way that we operate in cultures and things in societies. Politics has definitely created tensions. That's no doubt about that. I was just kind of struggling to think about it as a premarital conversation, but it would certainly test your ability to deal with disagreements sometimes. That's for sure, right? So thanks for hanging with us, Cass, and I think we're tuning off, right? All right, take care, guys.